Hello and welcome to the video. Today I'm at Heathrow Airport where I'm flying with American Airlines in first class from Heathrow to JFK, giving me a chance to try out their product for the first time as well as revisiting the Concorde Room. So I hope you enjoy the video and thanks for coming along for the ride. I was really looking forward to this trip, as not only had I never flown with American Airlines in first class before, but also because it was an opportunity to revisit BA's fantastic Concorde Room again, which I'd last visited back in 2009. Now usually American Airlines flights depart from Heathrow's Terminal 3 and they would use their own American Airlines First Class lounge for their passengers. But at the time of this trip, a number of American's more popular routes were still being served from Terminal 5 instead. In addition to their Galleries Club and Galleries First lounges, BA also have the Concorde Room here at Heathrow, which is exclusively for passengers who are actually flying in first class. This is a completely separate lounge with a full bar, terraced area and dining room, and it offers an elevated level of service compared to the other lounges that BA operate. As you'd expect, the lounge is very nicely appointed. There are 3 bookable cabanas in the lounge, which are essentially day rooms with their own ensuite showers. There's also a small display of Concorde memorabilia, which is well worth checking out if you're in the lounge. The lounge is a good size given the relatively small number of passengers it handles, with ample seating throughout. One of its best features is the terrace area, which opens out to the rest of the terminal. The height of the ceilings almost give a sense of being outside, and it provides some fantastic views out over the apron. In addition to a number of different seating areas, there are a couple of high benches which are ideal for working. Taking up nearly a third of the lounge space, the dining room provides an a la carte service for passengers, although it should be noted that you can also order the same food wherever you're sitting in the lounge. As it was still morning when I visited the lounge, it was the breakfast menu that was on offer. I opted for a couple of croissants and the pancakes with bacon and maple syrup. I also indulged in a glass of Laurent Perrier Grand Siècle champagne along with some orange juice. Cheers. As with all long-haul departures at Terminal 5, I knew that my flight today would be leaving from either the Satellite B or C gates. So I decided to head across to the Galleries Club lounge in Satellite 5B to spend a little time there ahead of my flight boarding. This meant the usual visit to the transit trains. If you fancy a good long walk before your flight, you can always go down a couple of levels below this to the service corridors and walk between the satellite terminals. The transit train is very convenient and it only takes a couple of minutes to get to Satellite B. Taking the lifts up from the transit area, it wasn't long before I was in the main concourse of the Satellite B terminal. This offers some fantastic views out over the gates and the aprons, so if you're a plane spotter, it's the place to be. The smaller Galleries Club lounge is usually quite quiet, and it's a nice space to relax before your flight. Unfortunately, my camera had stopped recording just after I arrived, but you can see some footage of the lounge in this video from a previous trip. Our aircraft today was this 6-year-old Boeing 777-300, one of 20 that American Airlines own. As I boarded, I was directed to the left for my seat in 2J, but unfortunately I was not escorted to my seat like most other carriers do with their first class passengers. Arriving at my seat, my first impressions were fairly positive. The seat was large and, as you would expect from a first class seat, provides a substantial amount of personal space. On the seat there was a bedding pack containing a large pillow and duvet cover with a smaller pillow and blanket on the footstool. The first class cabin has 8 seats in total, with 2 rows in a 1-2-1 layout. Taking a look around the seat itself, there's an excellent amount of legroom, with a footstool at the end of the seat that forms part of the bed when it's in lie flat mode. There's ample storage beneath this, which you can see by how easily I can fit my rucksack underneath it. A bottle of water and an amenity kit from Shinola was provided at each seat, and we'll have a look at the contents of that later. There was a coat hook on the back of each seat, and the in-flight entertainment was provided by a 15-inch touchscreen. The tray table was located at the side of the seat, with a small literature pocket just in front of it. These buttons unlocked the seat to allow it to be swivelled round to face the fold-out work table. Behind this was a touch panel for controlling the seat functions, which was very easy to use, and a pair of noise cancelling headphones were provided at each seat. The crew offered a choice of drink before departure, and I opted for some champagne, which was disappointingly served in a plastic glass and not very first class. To the back of the seat there's a small cabinet that contains 2 universal power sockets, a USB charging slot, a headphone jack and some AV inputs, as well as the remote control for the IFE. There's also a small reading light, which I found quite awkward to access, but it's probably a lot easier to access when the seat's rotated, and also a small storage area at the back. Each seat had its own dedicated overhead bins, so storage was not a problem for the flight, and there were also reading lights and 2 individual air vents above each seat. Menus were handed out by the crew, and I had a quick look over the food and drink options. American let you pre-order your main course or any special dietary meals up to 30 days before your departure. I had the beef cheeks, which my wife keeps telling me is why I walk a bit funny. A second light meal was provided near the end of the flight. Pajamas and slippers by Casper were handed out by the crew. These were a smart grey colour and were quite comfortable to wear. The tray table pops out easily from the side of the seat. It's a really good size and it's very sturdy, so you'd have no problem eating and also working on there with a laptop if you particularly wanted to. American's amenity kits are provided by Shinola, and this kit also contains some products from DS and Durga. This included a reasonably soft and well padded face mask, some lip balm, some hand and body lotion, a toothbrush and toothpaste, a small pack of tissues, earplugs, a small pen and a pair of socks, along with a small tub of mouthwash. Noise cancelling headphones from Bang & Olufsen are provided, and these worked really well during the flight. With boarding complete, we pushed back from our stand and began our taxi to the runway, ready to get our journey across the Atlantic underway. Today's flight would take us around 6 hours and 51 minutes, heading west over the south of Wales and Ireland, over the Atlantic and down the northeast coast of Canada. Before too long, we were lining up on runway 27 right, ready for our takeoff roll. If you're enjoying the video, please hit that like button, leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe for new videos coming out every week. As we climbed out of Heathrow, we could see BA's headquarters at Waterside out of the window. Before too long, we'd left the grey and wet skies of Heathrow below us, climbing above the clouds into some blue skies. As soon as the cabin crew were released, they came round to take drink and dinner orders. Hot towels were handed out, which was really welcome. The cabin crew set our table ready for service and brought out drinks along with a dish of warm nuts, which unfortunately was served in a foil dish, which I found a bit odd for first class. With the first course served, my crab starter and side salad were quite disappointing, but the squash soup was fantastic and packed full of flavour. The Asian beef cheeks were tender and tasty, but a little on the salty side. For dessert, I opted for a simple ice cream sundae with hot fudge, chopped nuts and whipped cream. Simple yet delicious. After dinner was finished, I decided to stretch my legs and see what the other cabins in the aircraft were like. Unfortunately, I couldn't get into the rear economy section as there was a trolley in the way, so I worked my way back through the forward economy section, which was laid out in a 3-4-3 configuration. In front of this was a separate smaller cabin with 4 rows of premium economy and a 2-4-2 layout. The main business class cabin has 11 rows of individual seats, all of which provide direct aisle access. And at the very front of the aircraft, there was a smaller business class cabin just with 2 rows in a 1-2-1 layout. And now it's time for a quick loo review. This was one of 2 toilets at the front of the first class cabin, and it was kept clean throughout the flight. Other than some DS and Durga hand soap, there was no other amenities provided, and it was fairly unremarkable. Once back at my seat, I decided to try it in bed mode. The bedding was very comfortable, and you certainly have plenty of space to stretch out when it's in bed mode, with your legs not feeling trapped in the little cubby under the screen. After a bit of a rest, I watched a movie and decided to check out the view. There had been a blanket of cloud beneath us for the majority of the flight. But as we approached the coast of Canada, that cleared away, leaving us with some stunning views of Newfoundland and the Quebec coastline. I still get blown away by the vast size of Canada. For a country which has a population around the same size as the UK, but a landmass a little larger than the United States, there's still a real sense of scale and wilderness to some of these areas, particularly during the winter months. With around an hour and 40 minutes of flying time left, one of the cabin crew came round to ask if I wanted the light meal. I opted for the pork buns, and to finish off service, I was offered a warm cookie. As we flew over Maine, we passed Bangor Airport, which was the first US airport I ever touched down in back in 1989 for a refuelling stop. It's fascinating to me how many different airfields you actually fly over on this approach to JFK, and I've noted a few of them here on the screen. Before long, we were beginning our final descent towards JFK, heading first south over Long Island before turning north again for our final approach to runway 4 right. As we taxied to the terminal, I reflected on my first class experience with American. With a great crew, a comfortable seat and good food, it was certainly a very enjoyable flight today, but to me it felt more like a really good business class offering rather than a true first class experience. As part of this trip, I'll be returning back with British Airways in first class, so it'll be interesting to compare and contrast the two different services and see how they stack up against each other. As we began disembarking the aircraft, the crew held all passengers back to allow first class passengers and those in business class in the front of the aircraft to get off first. And with that, a really enjoyable flight with American Airlines was over. It was time for me to head off to the terminal and then on to the TWA hotel where I was staying that night. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe for new videos every week.